I mentored a lot of programs like Techstars and Founders Institute. I run Startup Next in Boston. I'm a part of something called Open IDEO. For those of you who know design thinking, human-centric design, I'm a community impact fellow with Open IDEO. I speak on the TED circuit, but I love spending time with entrepreneurs, and that's what we're going to do tonight. So this is the number of days I travel every year. Well, half of those are not in the United States. And I only put that number up for one reason. I get to see a lot of shit. All right? And I get to connect a lot of dots by seeing a lot of shit. And that's an important part of what we're going to talk about. So what I want to share with you is some of the lessons that I learned as I work my way around the world, having missed flights and delayed flights and eating bad airline food, okay? So, of course, when someone pitches, more often than not, the judges, the angel investors, the venture capitalists, the strategic partners, the prospective customers are unimpressed, okay? They're unimpressed. Now, Steve Jobs, many of you know that he was a rather remarkable speaker, but when he gave a keynote, the famous Steve Notes, he would practice no less than 100 hours for that 1 hour Steve Note. Now, why would a man who is such a gifted and extraordinary communicator spend that much time preparing for his annual Apple Steve Note? Because pitching is hard, okay? And if you don't take it seriously, you will embarrass yourselves. That's the bottom line, okay? So we're going to spend some time talking about how not to do that, right? So what is an elevator pitch? Anybody want to volunteer? Who wants to tell me what you think an elevator pitch is? Yeah, what is one?
When you meet somebody you don't know and you want to transmit the idea without time.
Okay, so now, do you know any of these?
He's not ready to wait and receive
Right.
it. You need to pitch it before he hears it.
That's cool. So I heard a couple things. First of all, it's very quick, right? And that's right. That's absolutely very quick. But you said it's somebody you don't know. Hopefully, if you're pitching someone, quite honestly, you do know them, right? You've been introduced to Chris because someone has said, you know, he's one of the most active investors in Canada, and he understands early stage better than any VC in Montreal, and there's a warm introduction. So I would hate it if you were pitching someone you didn't know. But let's not go there tonight, okay?
But let's say
Yeah.
Because you don't know how long they will listen to.
Okay. All right, that's fair. Okay, yeah, what else would you say?
I think that it's like you begin by something really general,
Okay.
and then you come to the specific solution, what you can bring to this problem.
So why would you begin with something general? What would lead you to say that that's an important part of an elevator pitch?
Actually, generally, I would say like target problem, and then you come up with your solution.
Okay, so you're giving me the specifics. That's cool. So you're giving me sort of the flow, the arc. That's great. Thank you. Yeah, please.
The purpose would be to drop a nugget of info that's going to entice the person to want to have a follow-up conversation with you.
Okay, cool. That's great. That's the advanced answer, okay? Cool. Now, how many people think that an elevator pitch is selling? Anybody think that it's a sales function? That to give an elevator pitch is to sell?
Well, it's an opening.
Okay, and that's different though, okay? So I don't want you to think that it is selling. It's not, right? You are not doing an infomercial. You're not here to sell us Ginsu knives, right? This is very different than that, right? This is not this incredibly overt, in-your-face sales job. Because if you try to do that, you will not have the opener you want, and you will not create that situation where you can go back and have a second discussion. So anybody recognize this rather handsome guy? Mark Twain, right? Excellent, right? Now, why would I put up some dead old white American guy, right? What relevance does he have here? Okay? And I actually had a hint for those of you, if you weren't as literate as I expected.
Got the
Right?
fence painted.
But the reason I put up Mark Twain is he was an incredibly quotable guy, but one of my favorite quotes of all time from Mark Twain is, I wrote you a long letter because I did not have time to write you a short one, okay? And an elevator pitch is Mark Twain's version of a short letter, right? How many cooks in the room? Anybody like to make a reduction sauce, right? When you, my foodie friend here, of course, right? And what is a reduction sauce? When you boil something down to its absolute essence, right? When you just get to the essence of something, and that's really what the elevator pitch is, okay? You've got roughly, in Sergio, how much time we're going to give everybody tonight, as evil-minded judges? 1 minute, okay. You have literally a 60 seconds to Get someone to care, and the word care is an important part of what you're doing. You're not selling. But you need to get someone to care about you, and let me tell you, you is a big part of this. That impression, you have a profound influence on that impression. And they have to care about your thing, your idea, your project, your cause. Okay? Now, the problem with communication is the illusion that it has been accomplished. Okay? George Bernard Shaw was the poet laureate in the United Kingdom in a much more literate era than we live in. But let me tell you how much truth there is in that statement, okay? Just because you say it and I hear it doesn't mean I understand it. So here's an example of a man who pitched me and two other very experienced investors at a DFATE event, okay? He didn't get 1 minute, he had 10 minutes. He had an eternity to tell us what his company did and why it was unique. The three judges looked at each other. We are experienced, so we're used to listening to pitches. We looked at one another and we had, honest to God, not a clue in the world what his company was supposed to do. Okay? That is beyond anything you would ever hope to put yourselves in, because he basically torched himself in front of some very important investors in his community, right? So you've got some time. So what is a first impression? Now, for a lot of people, right, how many of you like to pitch? You love getting in front of a group and you love to pitch. It's something that you thrive on. Anybody love that? Yeah? Cool. Now, you are unique, my friend, okay? You are unique. Anybody else? Okay, so some of you like, now, for most of you in the room, you are looking into the audience and you are seeing all kinds of really scary stuff, okay? You're seeing really scary stuff, and for many of you, if the surveys are correct, pitching in front of an audience is something that is at the top of what people are afraid of. They're more afraid of pitching in public than dying, okay? That's a statement, okay? Now, the problem is when you're afraid, this is the first impression that you make, okay? So we're looking at you, and you're looking back at us, and we're saying, wow, I don't think this person's really comfortable pitching, right? So you don't want to go there, okay? That's not where any of you want to be, okay? Even if you've just smoked a lot of dope and you put a lot of Visine in your eyes and your pupils are dilated, it'll help you relax, but you'll never want to look like that. Now, there is an extraordinarily irrational fear that you can die through presenting. And there's only one documented case that I know of. In the United States of America in the 1800s, President William Henry Harrison came out for his inauguration address in Washington, D.C. And as you know, we do these inauguration addresses outdoors in the winter. Not that different than doing them outdoors in Montreal in the winter. So he had to be a macho guy, and he didn't wear a coat. He got pneumonia, and he died about 10 days later, okay? It's the only known time when someone died from a presentation. So for the rest of you, you're going to live through this tonight, okay? I promise you. And we do have a paramedic outside just in case, all right? So, death by presentation doesn't happen. Now, let's think about, so I want to go back to, what's your name?
Kimberly.
Say it one more time.
Kimberly.
Kimberly. I want to go back to Kimberly's point, right? There's an arc to this, okay? Now, in 60 seconds, those arcs have to be very quick. The slope on that arc has to be pretty quick, right? So there are three parts of the arc, right? There's an emotional part to the arc. That's where you come in, okay? And there's a rational part to the arc, which is where your product, your idea, your cause, your thing comes in, okay? So, the first thing is, before we buy your idea, we want to be able to buy you. You are an important part of this whole thing, okay? Now, how many of you think you're worthy of that? Anybody think you're worthy of being an important part of the pitch? Because you have to be, okay? Because I can ask Chris, or I can ask any investor who's experienced what they invest in. And if I ask you what's important in real estate, they're going to say location, location, and location, right? Those are the top three things that a real estate person is looking at. When you are an investor, the top three things you're looking at is team, team, and team. That's where you come in, okay? Because there's many examples of great teams with very bad ideas that were able to transition, to pivot, and to find success eventually because the team found a way. So how do you create that first impression? You need to be authentic, right? The more eccentric to a point, the better, okay? Eccentricity is good. You need to say why you care. Now, as an investor, when someone says, and I ask them why you want to do this, the minute they tell me, I want to make a lot of money, my brain, my heart, and my soul check out of the building, okay? Because everybody eventually wants to make a lot of money, but that's not how you get there. So it's about why do you care? And you can see the fire in someone's belly very, very clearly. So your authenticity and your passion around your idea are critical. Well, who are you? What do you stand for, right? What do you want to be known for? I want to know that about you. And where do you come from? Not necessarily where you were born, but what experiences have shaped you. Okay? Now remember, we got a minute, so this is not a 7-part Ken Burns documentary on your life. Okay? You got to get to the real high points on this quickly. Now, once you convince us of your authenticity, okay? Once we see who you really are, and I mean really genuinely who you are, the thing that is important is, as hard as it may be, and it's easy to say and it's harder to do, is the more relaxed you are, the more authentic you will be. The more relaxed you are, the more clear and concise you will be. Now, how do you get relaxed? That's a discussion for another night. And you've got to figure out a way to get in the zone. And we all have our techniques to get in the zone. Okay? But it's very clear sometimes when someone gets up, they're very, very nervous to the point where they can barely speak. Right? And this is practice, right? This comes with practice. Okay? Otherwise, we're going to see this crazy character, right? We don't want to see that character. Now, let's talk about your thing. So now, the first part, right, this is a 3-act play. The first act is over. Act 1 is you. You have impressed us with your authenticity. You have impressed us with your passion. You have impressed us with your belief in your cause. Now we want to hear about your cause, about your thing. So, you obviously, anytime you give any kind of communication to anybody, you have to make it relevant for that person. Right? And this is one of the real simple secrets of good, effective communication, so that George Bernard Shaw quote doesn't kick in. Right? If I'm talking to a financial executive, I want to put my language in financial terms. If I'm talking to the VP of engineering, then I want to talk about more technical or engineering-related things, right? I want to use that kind of language. If I'm talking to a sales rep, I'm going to talk the language of revenue and funnel and pipeline, okay? Because whether we know it or not, right, we may not be from Scotland, and we may not wear kilts, but we're all part of a clan. And the clan that we are from typically is the functional clan, right? We have studied something at school, we have practiced it as a professional, and so we speak a language of our clan. And therefore, in order to be an empathic communicator, I need to put myself in your shoes, and I need to communicate in the language that matters to you. Does that make sense? So tonight, you're pitching us largely, I believe, as investors. So, and Sergio, is that accurate? Is that where we want them to be in the role play as investors, or do they tell us who we are as an audience? What's the drill? So I don't know if they should say, hey, you're a key customer, you're a strategic partner. We give them the choice to tell us who they want us to be, or whether this is more of a straight-up investor pitch. I don't know. Any?
Just feedback. So they will pitch their ideas, and it's up to you to give them
but I want them to be able to sort of say, I'm pitching an investor, or I'm pitching a customer, I'm pitching a partner.
More like an
Because
investor.
those pitches does it make sense why those pitches could be very different?
Yeah.
Okay? So I'm going to recommend you tell us who you're pitching to. Okay? I want to understand your subject matter expertise. Okay? It's an irrational human act to buy from a startup. Right? It's irrational. You know why? Because I could just as easily go buy from IBM, or buy from Microsoft, or buy from Google, or buy from Sanofi, or Pfizer. Why would I buy from a startup? Okay? I'm going to buy from a startup because you have figured out something based on your subject matter expertise, your market research and market discovery, and the insights that you bring, where you're solving a problem that the big guys were just too slow to figure out how to respond to. Okay? So I want to know that you know. And you better know a lot more about the subject than I do. Okay? ideally, you can demonstrate validation. And all I mean by that is there are prospective users, there are customers, there are third parties that have laid hands on your prototype, and that they can actually tell us, or you can tell us, what their experience has been in using your thing. Okay? There is some level of market validation to say, this isn't just my good idea. There are people in the world that actually see value in this. They've laid hands on it, and they've given us this kind of feedback. So I want to hear from an outsider, right? I want you to bring the voice of the market into this discussion. That gives you a lot of credibility, okay? Now, I don't expect you to memorize this chart, but I want to know that the problem that you are addressing is an important one. So, for example, right, it's a very simple XY chart. On the horizontal axis is how important is this problem? Is it not important at all, meaning it's a 1, or is it insanely important, meaning it's a 10? I want to know that you're working on a really important problem, because I can tell you there are a lot of people that are solving problems that are not that important to you. Okay? The second thing I want to do is I want to know that you have a sense on the vertical axis as to what substitutes are available to solve that problem today, and how satisfying they are to the landscape. Okay? It's a measure of competitive intensity. So some of you may know Red Ocean, Blue Ocean, right? The Blue Ocean strategy book. I don't know if anybody's read that book or not. But I don't want you guys to be telling me that you're in a market where there are 200 other people trying to jostle their way in and elbow in. So I want to understand a little bit about how you play out in this market now. Is this an important problem? Why is it an important problem? What validation do you have? And then the position of how you're going to do relative to existing solutions, okay? So, now, Mark Twain, I'll quote him another time. Don't look at the world with your hands in your pockets. To write about it, you have to reach out and touch it. What that means in the Techstars mantra is get the hell out of the building, okay? This cannot be an ivory tower discussion. You have to immerse yourself in the market, and I need to know that you have lived in the market, that you have gone out into the market, and you have really gathered a tremendous amount of feedback from the people in that ecosystem that matter, okay? So get out of the building. I talk a lot about three-dimensional storytelling, and what I mean by that very simply is I want you to be able to hold up potentially a persona. So you can imagine, and most of you know what a persona is. You understand what a persona is? Who doesn't know what a persona is? Or does not know? Don't be embarrassed to raise your hands, okay? So a persona is essentially a composite of a number of different attributes that define an individual that is representative of your target market. And often you create a name for that person. You create imagery for that person. It's as if you know them, okay? So one effective way of starting out is to create a persona for your perfect target customer. My persona's name in the HubSpot vernacular, Marketing Mary, okay? HubSpot targeted 3 personas. HubSpot's a marketing automation company that went public last year out of Boston. Marketing Mary happened to be their primary persona. And Marketing Mary was the head of marketing of a mid-sized company. And ultimately, she embodied everything that was relevant to the HubSpot marketing automation solution. And so you can start to tell a story about Marketing Mary's frustrations, her annoyances, the gaps that prevent her from getting her job, her ambitions, and how you are able to deliver something of value, not to some nameless, faceless number, but to someone who has some level of humanity so that we are brought into the emotion of how you solve a problem, okay? So three-dimensional storytelling is about humanizing your approach, okay? It could be by using customer references or key opinion leaders or others, but I want to hear that this is real, not clinical, okay? And then finally, it's got to be about the audience, okay? It's got to be about the judges or the investors or the customers or the partners or whoever you're pitching, whoever you're looking to get a call to action to, okay? Now, it could be a fear of loss. There are many, many solutions where if I don't act, I'm going to lose something. I could lose market share. I could lose money, right? There's the greed of gain. Now, Gordon Gekko talked about greed is good. Now, I'm not sure if I agree with that, but unfortunately, the world is driven to a large extent by greed. So I'm going to help you make more money. So that's a sales automation solution. That's a marketing automation solution, right? There's got to be some simple way to describe why they are going to benefit by enlisting in your cause. Now, if it's a social venture, you're going to ask them to enlist in to give part of their cause, whatever that cause may be, in order to help you to change the world. But you've got to be able to excite them and make them eager to join forces with you, right? And that's the ask. So that, in a nutshell, is what we're trying to do. Now, you know, for most of you probably, you probably don't think about dopamine very often, but they did a lot of tests around what people that attended Steve Jobs' keynotes, and there was a pronounced dopamine effect, okay? Those of you who go out and like to run, you get runner's high, okay? And runner's high is dopamine, right? A great speaker really can spike dopamine. Now, John McCain was not a good speaker, okay? So I love this slide. John McCain, feel the excitement. Don't you love that, right? So this is the antithesis of dopamine, right? This is a sleeping pill, okay? And that is just not where we want to be right now. So one of the things that's really important is you got to bring your best self. You've got to bring your most energized self. And the only way you do that is when you tap into the passion of what you're presenting, right? You got to be able to figure out what's going to drive that passion. That's what I want to see from you guys, okay? Now, one simple test is the pub test. So you can look at a presentation and you can score it from 0 to 10. Even if they were paying for all of my drinks, I wouldn't go, okay? Done. Halfway through. I'd go if they invited me, but I don't really care one way or the other. I could just as easily go home and I can watch, Game of Thrones or something like that, okay? Or I'm going to invite them to the pub. I found that so fascinating, I've got to learn more, right? So it's just one way of thinking about how you would score each of the presentations that you hear tonight, okay? So, remember, the arc. About you, you got to make us care right away, right? This is a 1-minute presentation. You got to hook us quick. Prove you know your stuff, and then tell me about why I should care. Now, without going into a lot of detail, there's a lot of, throughout history, a lot of very thoughtful people have created very similar kinds of approaches to how you tell stories. Our friend Aristotle, start with a story to arouse interest, okay? Pose the problem. So we go back to Kimberly's point. Pose the problem, offer a solution, talk about the benefits of why the solution is valuable, and then state a call to action. Pretty consistent with what we just talked about, okay? If you go to anybody ever talk at TED, this is what they tell you. They want you to give the talk of your life. Show the real you. That's authenticity, very consistent. Make the complex plain, right? Don't speak in acronyms. Speak in plain spoken French or English. Connect with people's emotions. God forbid, do not read your talk. Please do not read your talk. And practice, practice, and practice. Okay? Or Steve Jobs, 3-act play, create the story, deliver the experience, right? A lot of refining and rehearsing. Steve Jobs always needed a foil, right? We happen to be in the Microsoft building. For many years, Microsoft was Steve Jobs' foil. And then when Microsoft became less relevant, Google was his foil, right? There always was a villain in a Steve Jobs presentation. And he was brilliant in understanding how to create villains, right? Because it made for more compelling theater, right? This is what you need to do. We're wrapping up now. You need to get it down to the one thing that matters. How many engineers in the room? Where are my engineers? Okay. You guys, this is always harder for engineers, okay? Because this is what an engineer is going to do. You're going to do what I call a core dump, right? You're going to take that value proposition and you're going to be in that second to left column and you're going to spew every frickin' benefit that you can come up with, okay? And you're going to talk about the 844 reasons why someone should buy your product, okay? That's 843 reasons too many, okay? Where you want to be is on the right. You want to get to the one thing that matters. Now, this goes back to my friend Mark Twain. I wrote you a long letter because I didn't have time to write you a short one, okay? The short letter is the resonating focus, the one or at best 2 points of differentiation that define your raison d'etre. Why are you here? God help us if it's more than 2, okay? So get down to the essence of it, okay? Now, why would I put up Twitch? Okay, some of you know the website Twitch, but I'm not putting it up because I want you to play games. I'm putting it up because Twitch is an acronym. or it's a concatenation of two words. It's a Twitter pitch. Okay, you know what a Twitter pitch is? How do you communicate your value prop in 140 characters, okay? Now that takes discipline. That's an awesome place to start. Can you get your, what the essence of who you are in 140 characters? You're doing well, okay? But it's a great practice point. It's a great discipline to get down to 140 characters, okay? The ability to use metaphors. So this is very powerful, okay? Steve Jobs talked about a PC as a bicycle for the mind, okay? Very simple to use. You can fall off that bicycle, but you get right back on. If you don't use it for 5 years, you remember exactly how it works, right? The ultimate in simplicity and utility. Think about metaphors that will allow you to convey what it is you do, so that, because a lot of times it's hard to be able to describe in a short number of words what you do. So look for metaphors that capture what you do, okay? And then as we start to wind down, please don't remember or try to memorize. I know a lot of people, they will try to memorize every word in sequence. That is a disaster waiting to happen, because the second you forget like that 14th word in, you're paralyzed, okay? And it happens all the time. So you don't memorize, okay, because you'll crash and burn if you do, okay? You speak from your heart. That's how you convey passion, that's how you convey emotion. But if you try to memorize it, I promise you, it ain't going to end well, okay? So, you are the master, we're all the master of our own fate, right? This comes from our good friend Nelson Mandela, who recited this poem every day for 27 years. You are all the masters of your own fate. If you want to be good at presenting and pitching, you can be, okay? You can't blame anybody else if you're not, okay? I know this is not a hockey player, so forgive me for not getting with the program here in Quebec. I'm going to quote Larry Bird from the Boston Celtics, right? Bird was not the most elegant guy on the court. He wasn't the most talented. Man, he'd work his ass off. And I love this quote, Everybody else would go in the locker room, take the shower. I'd go shoot an extra 30 minutes before I quit, right? If you want to get good at something, you got to practice, right? You know the 10,000-hour law, right? We become experts when we've done something for about 10,000 hours, okay? I'm going to skip this slide. Anybody see the King's Speech? Right? So, you guys know this guy named Jack Welch? Jack Welch created more value than any CEO in history. Incredible communicator. He had a speech coach. Mark Zuckerberg, he's got a speech coach. Okay? So for the rest of us mere mortals, why wouldn't we bring someone in who can help us polish this craft? Okay? So this man, at a very important time in history, realized that he had a job to do, and if he couldn't communicate, he couldn't lead his nation. And he wound up subjecting himself to a lot of embarrassment. But he found an incredibly effective mentor that gave him tough love, and he made it work. Okay? So go out and find someone who's going to help you deliver a great pitch. I give you a lot of credit for coming up here tonight to get started, but it's the first day in your journey. Okay? And make sure that person, okay, that person who's going to mentor you, yes, you want tough love, but you also want them to give you all the room in the world to grow. Okay? There's a lot of different kinds of mentors in the world. You want mentors that see your greatness. Okay? That's what it's all about. So that's all I have prepared. I'm happy to answer a couple of questions, and then we're going to open it up, I think, for pitches. Okay? So what questions can I answer for you guys? Or can the panel answer for you guys? Yeah, please.
I see a lot of points. They are all important, but
Yeah.
in 1 minute, is it possible to put all of them in it? Or
Sure.
we have to choose?
Well, okay. First of all, remember one thing. You're all individual. Okay? So what works for me, what works for Chris, what works for Catherine, doesn't necessarily work for you. So I've had a lot of situations where someone bowed out at the last minute to give a speech, and they said, I'll give you my slides. I say, I appreciate it, but thanks, but no thanks. Because I'm not you, and I can't just parrot your words back. But I will say 3 things anyway, right? But it has to work for you. I need to see your authentic self and the passion that comes with that, right? That's the first thing I need to see. So that's very simple to remember. Your authentic and passionate self. The second thing I need to see from you is your expertise around this idea, okay? And the market discovery work that you've done to become an expert in it. And then the last part is the empathy as to being able to tell me why I should take action. Right? Because in the end of the day, what's in it for me, WIFM rules the world. So you have to be empathetic enough to understand what the WIFM is for any one of us. So that's how I would break it down. Maybe these guys will give you a different answer. Okay? So, yeah, please.
Is it the same structure for a longer pitch, like 10 minutes, 20 minutes, would it be the same?
In general, it's the same structure. Obviously, you get to layer on a lot more detail, but the arc is more or less the same, and you can take a slight variation from Aristotle, or you can take a slight variation from Ted. But I think what I wanted to show is the consistency, right? That arc is pretty consistent. I mean, how many of you like to read novels, right? How many of you read novels, right? I make a decision in the first 5 pages whether once I open up a novel, have I been drawn enough in by the character to care? Okay? And if I'm not, I put the novel away. Life is too short to read a shitty book. Okay? So why would I read a shitty book? So the arc is the same. I don't need to be captivated. So, you know, you getting someone hooked with your passion, your authenticity is critical. No matter what we're talking about a product, a service, a device, a restaurant, you've got to convince me why you're going to do something different and better. And I need to know what's in it for me. So I don't think it changes all that much. Now, if you're presenting an academic paper, there's a whole different discussion. But we're talking about enlisting people in your dream right now. Okay? 1 or 2 more questions. Yeah, please. Yeah.
For when you pitch to investors, do you usually bring out some finance information, like market shares?
Well, so when you pitch an investor, if you're going to go pitch Chris Arsenault, okay? And I'm going to let Chris answer this because he's the expert in the room here, okay? So why don't I let you answer that question, all right?
Financial information is less important than, you know, the key. If you say that, hey, I'm doing this thing and I have this much traction, then I can understand what the market is going to be, especially in the first pitch. It's more about whatever is important in order to get to that second meeting, right? If you don't say anything and I have no clue once we walk out of the elevator, there won't be a second meeting. But if you try to drill down on, you have 13% EBITDA and in a growth market of I won't get it either. I don't have time. My brain is not set on understanding you. My brain is set on trying to get a snapshot of it.
Yeah, there's a time and a place for those details.